much for coming to our Zelda panel today. I see some incredible cosplay in this crowd. Could any cosplayers just stand up quickly and can we all give them a round of applause? Not many video game or even games, let alone franchises, that can say they've been around for 30 years, let alone still going strong. So The Legend of Zelda, it's had such an impact on video games in general. It's got such a strong and passionate fandom. So we're here today to talk about, sort of how the series has developed over the last 30 years and some of those memorable moments. So just to introduce ourselves, we're part of a website called Zelda Universe. It's one of the largest and longest running fan sites dedicated to the Legend of Zelda. So my name is Shona, and with me today we have Dave and Cody. So I just want to ask you guys, how did you become Zelda fans? Cody?
Well, my first Zelda game was a game called Ocarina of Time. Yeah. You may have heard of it. It's a bit obscure, but those niche fans will know about it. And that just what blew my mind. I got a Nintendo 64, and I had Super Mario 64, and I had Ocarina of Time, and that was just, that was it. I knew that gaming was something that I was going to be addicted to forever. My favorites are probably, I like the open world ones. I like Majora's Mask. I like the Wind Waker. I think those are great games.
My first game was Link to the Past back on Super Nintendo. I got it for the Super Nintendo pretty much like at launch or when it came out, and I think I played that game like 15, 17 times, I don't know how many. Link's Awakening was my second one, and that was really what cemented me into it, just because the player's guides had so much art, and I just started like drawing Zelda stuff in notebooks, created my own like fan games. Yeah, fan games at the time, they were bad, but whatever. But like, I actually was thinking about this before. I don't know what my favorite Zelda game is. It's like trying to pick from your children, like which one is your favorite? I love a lot of them, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess. There's a lot of really good ones out there, so yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually old school, so I started with the very first Zelda on the NES. It wasn't actually until Ocarina of Time, because that transition to 3D just blew my mind, and ever since then I've been an obsessed fan, so here we are like how many years later. I also want to introduce Sabo in the audience. So we are going to be holding a few trivia questions throughout the panel. So when we come to one of those, if you know the answer, stick up your hand. Sabo will throw this mic to you. And if you get the question right, then we have some prizes, including one that is courtesy of Nintendo. So yeah, it's a really cool one. I loved it. Cool. All right. So, 30 years of Zelda, how many games are there exactly? Well, we have 18 games in the main series. We've had basically 8 spin-off titles, and then of course, we have a new one coming 2017.
So yeah, one thing I guess that we have to mention when we're doing a panel about Zelda is that if we're complaining about a Zelda game or something, it's in comparison to other Zelda games because we're so spoiled for choice in the Zelda series. It's a series where there's good reason for people to have any number of Zelda games as their favorite. So we sort of come at this with the idea that these are all like 9 out of 10 games. Now let's be really cruel to them to figure out which one's the top.
So when we say like which one is a bad Zelda game, I mean that's compared to other Zelda games, because like Zelda games are all like amazing experiences. So we love them all.
Yeah, especially the CDI Zelda games. They're great.
Alright, so I guess we'll start at the very beginning. And how did the Zelda series actually come about?
Well, you probably might know this, but Miyamoto, as a kid, he lived in Kyoto, which is a little bit more, it's not like Tokyo, it's a little bit more in the rural part of the world. And so he would go on adventures, exploring the woods and whatnot, and then, you know, fast forward, I don't know, 30 some years later, and all of a sudden he got this inspiration wanting to recreate those childhood memories. It sounds like a lot of what we like to do, like recreate those things from our childhood. And so he wanted that sense of exploration and just going out into the wilderness, and thus Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, so I mean the first Zelda game had a pretty amazing impact. It was the first home console game that could actually be saved. So it was a launch title for the Famicom disk system, and then the cartridge version was had a built-in battery. So previous games had to use like passwords or other systems, but Zelda was so big that you needed to save your progress. And it was also the first NES title to sell 1 million copies. So that was a pretty big deal at the time. So I guess I want to sort of open up the question. I mean, is this a good game, and why was it so important?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about how good a game is, especially from the past, you sort of have to split it into A, is this an important game? And B, how would this fare if it was released today? Those are sort of two different perspectives that people come at, you know, is it a good game from? Because if we ask, is it an important game? Absolutely, The Legend of Zelda is one of the most important games of all time. So many current games owe, you know, a lot to the original Legend of Zelda and the genre it basically created. People call other games Zelda games. These games like Darksiders, Okami, that, you know, they basically, they're Zelda games, even though they have nothing to do with Zelda. But when it comes to, is it still a good game? I think that's where it gets, you know, if it was released today, I think that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, like, Zelda by all means was a great game in 1986. I mean, it was like, what, 512 kilobytes on a cartridge. Like, that's pretty amazing to have all of that content there. But if you release this today, people would be like, oh, well, that's Nintendo hard, and that's kind of the thing that kind of gets a little, like, NES games were rough, man. Like, how many times did you die in those things? Like, it's really hard. So, and there was really no instruction manuals. You had to just hope you found that dungeon that was hidden under the bush. That was like good luck.
So I had a copy of the game that had like a cool strategy map inside it with a few extra hints, but I mean you still basically had to like burn every bush and bomb every rock to find all the secrets.
Yeah, and it was, you know, a lot of it was just rumor based on the other kids in your school. Like, you know, because you see this a lot with old games. People would insist, look, under that truck there's a Mew. You have to believe in it. And, you know, just in the sort of early internet age and pre-internet age, it was, you know, it was all about what your friends thought they knew about the games, and that's sort of part of the integral experience of the original Legend of Zelda, I think. I think it's hard to go back today and have the same experience, especially looking back and thinking, all right, well, I've seen all these other Zelda games now, you know, like A Link to the Past, which took the Legend of Zelda, ironed out some of the rougher parts of it, you know, and so then it's hard to go back to the original Legend of Zelda. It's clearly an important game, but I think when you grew up determines how easy it is for you to play it, to go back and play it.
Yeah, and there are actually a lot of things from the original Zelda that still are used in Zelda games today. So, I mean, like certain enemies, items, I mean, the whole concept of the Triforce and Link, Zelda and Ganon, that was all born in this game. So I actually want to open up to our first trivia question now, so get your Zelda caps on. We have a little classic Link figure to give away, something I picked up in Japan. Actually, it's not so common here, I don't think. So, the first question.
Alright, so the first trivia question, how do you unlock the second quest of the original Zelda without beating the game?
I think it's the Misty, where someone who looks like Misty back there was the first hand I saw.
Yeah, is that right?
Call the safe button.
Hello?
Yes.
Is it you call your character Zelda?
That's
right.
Correct.
People tend to get a bit mad when you call Link Zelda now, but back in the day it was how you unlocked the second quest.
Alright, so then from the first Zelda we had a sequel, The Adventure of Link.
which was very, very different. It's kind of the black sheep of the family nowadays, just given that it's more of an RPG rather than what we call an adventure game in many respects.
Yeah, but I mean, at the time, like, there wasn't a Zelda formula or anything. I mean, Zelda was still trying to find its feet and experiment. So, I mean, now it's the black sheep, but back then it was kind of cool.
And
it was hard.
it introduced, well, for example, the magic system that's still used today. So some of the experiments that, some of the experiments that they came up with are still here.
Not to mention the Triforce of Courage. We wouldn't have had that without Zelda 2.
We had 2 pieces of the Triforce originally, which is, I don't know what kind of Triforce that is, but...
Then the next one we had, so we moved on to the Super Nintendo and we had A Link to the Past.
It's my favorite just because it really cemented the Zelda formula in that sense, where you have several dungeons and then you have this big plot twist, go collect a whole bunch of things, but you kind of had that thing of, here's what it means to be Zelda. All of these items, all of these enemies, and really just this open world exploration. It really went back to the first game and said, this is really what it's about.
And also on the Game Boy, we had the first title where Zelda went portable, which was Link's Awakening.
Yeah, this game is fascinating because, well, if you look at the story, well, there's no Ganon, Link's in a dream or something, there's a giant fish and you have to wake it up, there's like Goombas and Chain Chomps from the Mario series, like they clearly just thought, well, look, let's just do what we want, it's a handheld, maybe they won't notice. But it's a great game, so.
And then something that was really cool, like being a sort of late 80s, 90s child, was like Nintendo culture. It was so big back then. So who's seen the Zelda cartoon? Yeah. So I mean, I actually watched this back in the day when it was on TV. I think it was Channel 9 or something had it. So it had the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. And I used to love that just because it was like Mario on TV. And then one day I'm watching it and there's The Legend of Zelda on the screen. And then all of a sudden they see Link. And I'm like, that's not how I expected Link to behave.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Yeah, there's a great YouTube video of a compilation of every time he says "Excuse me, princess" in the series, and it goes for minutes. It's only like a 12-episode series, so it's very impressive how long that YouTube video is.
Yeah, and it's funny because we like to make fun of it now, but I mean back then it was just another kid's cartoon, really. So yeah. Okay, so who thinks Ocarina of Time is the best Zelda of them all?
Yes.
Well, it is actually a Guinness World Record holder for the most critically acclaimed game of all time. And considering this came out in 1998, that's 18 years. So, I mean, this game has had an incredible impact. I mean, do you guys think it is the best Zelda game, and why do people still love it after all this time?
Look, I think, going back to what I said about the original Legend of Zelda, you have to split it into how it would do today and how important it was. And I think Ocarina of Time, it paved the way for a lot of things that we take for granted today, like how to make things like combat work in a 3D space, which had never really been explored before because they were on the frontier. And it was super important in that way.
The Z targeting that they introduced, I mean, that was then used in so many other games.
Right, like first-person shooters and that kind of thing have, Ocarina of Time to thank for some of its targeting and all of the things that it introduced. I think it's also a great game on its own because we can answer the question of what happened if it was released today. Ocarina of Time 3D for the 3DS got released just a few years ago, and people gave it, it's like a 95. It's great. It's fantastic still. With a few tweaks where they made it so, for example, you don't have to take the hover boots on and off and on and off and on and off by pausing and selecting the thing, and they changed a few UI things to make it better, but the critics agreed this is still a fantastic game.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Ocarina is popular for good reasons. Like, it brought some really memorable characters. It's probably the first game other than perhaps Marin from Link's Awakening, the first character you really care about. Maybe not the old man from the first game, because he just says cryptic things to you, whatever. But like, you invoke the names of Saria and Rudo and input, and all of a sudden, like, your mind goes places. Like, you interact with these people, and you really have affection for them, and that's really the first big Zelda game to do that. And so, of course, it's going to pull our heartstrings just a little bit. Yeah, maybe there's a little nostalgia in there, but really, like, looking back on it, like, it's still fun, and that's the really important thing. Like, it still works. It's not clunky. It works really well.
Yeah, and I mean, like if you look at the Nintendo 64 version, I mean, yes, it's all polygons and triangles everywhere, but I mean, yeah, the 3D version, the remake, it's still just an amazing game, and I think it did handle that transition from 2D to 3D just really well. It certainly, you know, changed a lot of things, like how you explored and how you had to find items. I mean, the pieces of heart, for example, in the older games, you just find them in the overworld or in caves and places, but Ocarina introduced like going on quests to find them all, and I was able to do a lot more. I guess it was the trading stuff in Link's Awakening too, but yeah, definitely brought that into it more. So the question is, I mean, do you think it's overrated? I mean, it is 18 years old. We have had, you know, bigger and better Zelda games that have come up since, but I mean, people still go back to Ocarina of Time, and it's still so loved by fans.
There's a quote that Blizzard came out with, why World of Warcraft is one of the best games, MMOs of all time, and their answer was that they didn't do one specific thing 100% better. They did 100% of the things 1% better, and that's why World of Warcraft is a big game. And Ocarina of Time really has done, they did that. They did every little aspect of that game is just a little bit better than everything else. Certainly other games have surpassed it in minor things, like there's some really great things with Wind Waker, there's some really great things with Twilight Princess, but Ocarina of Time is solid across the board, and you're not going to find another Zelda game that has that 1% better, even if something might have surpassed it in graphics or exploration or whatever.
Yeah, and then I guess we can't talk about Ocarina without then mentioning Majora's Mask, which is the direct sequel.
Yeah, look, Majora's Mask is better than Ocarina of Time. That's just So, look, Ocarina, it was a vast game, but Majora's Mask, it went deep. It sort of said, let's cut into this cross-section of Ocarina of Time, and let's make it so that you care about the characters, so that the characters are, you know, because let's face it, in Ocarina of Time, most of the characters, you could replace them with a signpost that said the same thing as they were saying, and you wouldn't notice a major difference. But you can't do that in Majora's Mask, because these characters, you go through their schedule, you go through their lives, you find out that the postman is so dedicated that he refuses to run away when the moon's falling because he still has mail to deliver, you know, and this swordsman who teaches you training, he's cowering on the last day behind it, you know, in a little thing behind his room, and you know, you get so much character out of Majora's Mask, and that's what I really love about it.
And the same thing with the dungeons. Like, there are only 4. Okay, 4 dungeons compared to the 8, 9 that are in Ocarina of Time. But how different are they? Like, you take the first several dungeons of Ocarina of Time, and okay, other than you're in the belly of the fish, like, they're kind of the same-ish. But Majora's Mask, the 4 dungeons, none of them work the same way. You have a different aspect in each one. The Great Bay Temple is completely bizarre. Stone Tower is really cool.
Even more bizarre.
Yeah, and like, they are all very different, and they're just extrapolations or explorations on what can you do with a dungeon in that space. So it's really deep, even if it may not be as broad as Ocarina.
So I think it's time for another trivia question. So we have a copy of Fangamer's book, The Legend of the Hero, to give away. So we have an Ocarina question this time.
So the question is, what is the name of the annoying owl from Ocarina of Time?
I think we had this hand up first, actually.
Kapora Gabora?
Yep, that is
sounds
correct.
right to me, yeah.
Did you want to hear us say that again?
There's also a reference in Skyward Sword with the headmaster as well.
Yeah. Okay, so then we move on to the GameCube era and the Wind Waker. But I don't think we can talk about the Wind Waker without talking about the new graphical style that it introduced and the cel shading controversy. So in the year 2000, Nintendo showed a tech demo for the GameCube at Space World, which basically had this realistic looking fight between Link and Ganondorf. You can see the picture up on the screen. And that is what everyone was expecting from the next Zelda on the GameCube. And then the following year at Space World, they showed us this. And the Zelda community went crazy. I know I was pretty upset. I'm like, what is this? This isn't my Link, you know? What's this joke? But of course, I mean, the cell shading did remain. It was refined. Toon Link has become a staple of the franchise now. And honestly, I think everyone came to love the Wind Waker.
Yeah, I think Nintendo, when they make a graphical style, they do it with a purpose. And I think the purpose here was characterization. Like, the expressiveness on everyone's faces is immense. You know, you can really feel, you know, Link is, you know, waving goodbye when he leaves his home and all of this. And, you know, that it's so much more emotion than we've seen, I guess, in any previous Zelda game.
Yeah, I remember being in the, not the Great Day, whatever the second dungeon is, I can't remember the name of it offhand, but like, I remember like, I have no idea where to go, what am I doing, what's, like, I'm just lost, and all of a sudden I saw Link just kind of looking up, and I'm like, alright, what's up there, Link? And I just moved my camera, like, you found how I'm supposed to get out of here, thank you so much, like, thank you, Link. So like, it was really amazing just to kind of have Link evolve as a personality, like, you know, he felt for his sister, whereas, you know, you look at Ocarina of Time, bless its soul, but, you know, Link's just kind of like, that this is about the emotional depth he has, just like, looking at this world, like, with amazement and horror almost, but that's it, that's all he really has, and, like, Wind Waker Link really pushed Link as a personification in the game.
And that's actually, you know, brings up an interesting point, because, you know, Nintendo has said that Link is an avatar, and so we are supposed to sort of jump into his shoes and experience the game through Link. But there are some fans who see Link as an actual character. So like, and certainly for me, growing up with the old school games and using my imagination to fill in a lot of like the story and that, which the games couldn't do, and seeing the cartoon where Link was given a personality, maybe not a very good one, but for me, Link has been a character, and Ocarina of Time, I mean, you sort of learn a little bit about his past, you think he's Kokiri, then he's not, and then Wind Waker, he's got this relationship with his sister and his grandma. And then, you know, Nintendo sort of said, yeah, look, he's more just an avatar, and he became a bit bland in some of the future games, so...
We're talking about Twilight Princess.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I want to ask you guys, like, do you think Link should be given a character, or do you prefer to see him as an avatar?
Well, I mean, can we give a shout out to Ganondorf in Wind Waker? He's probably one of the best Ganondorfs there is. I mean, we can make fun of him a little bit of emo Ganondorf, whatever it is, but I felt for him, and then he just kind of loses it after, like, the Triforce gets taken away from him, like, alright, fine, we have to have this, you know, this throwdown now. But he was one of the best characters, and, you know, that makes me want, in some regards, to have Link be a character in the game, because that's, you know, I'm expressing the same things too, and it frustrates me sometimes when I can't be like, yeah, not, you know, good job or whatever it is, I can't, you know, express to people how I want, how it is. So personally, I like having Link having a character, but, you know, I know it's not for everyone.
Yeah, look, I think Zelda fans tend to get hung up on small arguments about things. That's an understatement, but, you know, because for a while it was, you know, Link shouldn't be a character, then in the Wind Waker they made Link more of a character, people liked it, you know, and then fans said there should be no voice acting in the Zelda series. The Breath of the Wild trailer showed voice acting, everyone was like, oh, okay. I think as long as Nintendo does it well, people aren't overly concerned with what they do, you know, as long as they can trust that it has that Nintendo sort of seal of quality on it. I do think that the characterization helps, it actually helps immersion for me, because that was a problem I ran into in, well, for example, Twilight Princess, where, you know, something would be happening, you know, some emotional scene would be happening. In Twilight Princess, Link is sort of sitting there, he always looks stunned, like he's either stunned and happy, stunned and sad, or stunned and shocked, and those are like his range of emotions.
And then Skyward Sword is like, duh.
So, and it sort of, it takes away from the immersion a bit for me when, you know, there's some touching scene with Midna and Link's just there like...
Yeah, it was almost like the Legend of Midna. I mean, Link was just along for the ride. In fact, well, Link was the ride for half the game.
But so many arguments on things like again, Link's the Past was my first, so therefore I want games to have that quality of Link to the Past because I think we all fall in love. When the first Zelda game you play, it's the one you really fall in love with, and so therefore the further apart you get from that, like, well, that's not exactly what I want, fine. But eventually you usually be like, oh, well, this is Zelda 2. And like, it's hard to define. Like, you ask the question, what makes a Zelda game? And it's really hard because I ask like 100 of you, and you're going to give me 200 answers to this question. It's so varied in difference, and you're just like, this is all Zelda, and we can just relish in all of the diversity here.
Yeah, and I think if we're talking about the good and the bad of the Wind Waker, I think one great thing about it, I thought the music was the best in the series. I think it has some really memorable music, and then we come to, I guess, the complaints about the Wind Waker, where I think some people, they didn't really like the sailing. They thought it was a bit slow, and there were some pacing issues near the end with fetching Triforce pieces, and that it was too easy, I guess, And so what they did was, with the Wind Waker HD, they actually addressed all of those. They created a swift sail. They cut down on that Triforce quest at the end, so you have to deal with Tingle less, which is always a positive. And they added selfies, which is the most important part of Wind Waker HD, I think. Because I was constantly taking selfies and uploading it to Twitter, like selfies with the boss, so here's the Helm Rock King or whatever. So yeah, the Wind Waker, I think overall it's one of my favorites.
Okay, so it is time for a new trivia question. We have a set of Zelda playing cards to give away this time. And so the question is, what is the true identity of the King of Red Lions? And I think we had this guy
right next to you, Sabo.
Right here, was first up.
He's King Daphnis No Hands in Hyrule.
Very good.
That's very Congratulations. Okay, so from Wind Waker, we had two direct sequels, both released on the Nintendo DS with Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Probably among the more controversial Zelda titles, with the Temple of the Ocean King repetition, and then trains, like a Zelda game about trains.
Yeah. So the trains didn't bother me that they have trains, because the Zelda series has always been inconsistent with technology. I think Zelda 2 had an elevator. Ocarina of Time, the hookshot is obviously futuristic Batman technology.
The Oracles had minecarts on trails.
Yeah, but I guess the function of the trains was what bothered me. It took you from place to place, rather than having an overworld, which I always thought the open world exploration was a big part of the Zelda series. So to see you, because people use on rails as an expression to mean that, something's just very linear, and this was literally an on rails Zelda game through tracks. So, the dungeons were fine and all of that, but just on a conceptual level, I really like Zelda to be, I guess, more open world.
It made me miss sailing, actually. I was like, I wish I could do this. And granted, there's some really, the last third of Spirit Tracks is an amazing game, but it just took a little bit to get there. And it was one of those, I remember learning the first song on the pitch pipes, and it was 2 notes long, and I'm like, the shortest song in Ocarina is 5 notes. I can memorize more than 2 things. And it just bothered me a little bit of it's like, here we're gonna hold your hand a little bit. And granted, Skyward, again, Spirit Tracks is an amazing game. It's got some really good aspects, but it just took a while to get there. Whereas Phantom Hourglass, it improved on the sailing mechanic from Wind Waker, but it certainly just, that repetition, I think, eventually just kind of wore you down and all right, let's go back to that one temple, okay, fine.
Yeah, and speaking of those, the spirit flutes, look, I think this is sometimes Nintendo loves their gimmicks, but in this one where you had to blow into the 3DS, it's just really awkward when you're on a train or something. You're there going,
Yeah.
And not to mention that you couldn't play on the train because the microphone would just, and it was like, it just thought you were always blowing. And I'm like, oh, okay,
No,
that's
I played it alright on the train. And then I guess we had, the other handhelds. We should probably mention those too, because generally what we found is that the major console titles are what takes the Zelda series in a new direction, whereas the handhelds tend to repeat what's been done before.
Yeah, well, they're all unique. Oracle of Ages and Seasons and the Minish Cap are all unique in that they're not made by Nintendo. These were the 3 made by, I believe, Capcom.
Yeah.
And so they introduced a few, weird things of their own. There's some great companions in the Oracle games. There's a kangaroo, which I think is great representation of Australians. And there's some sort of bear with little wings. I wasn't really clear on what exactly Moosh was, and a Dodongo. So I loved the Oracle games, especially the, when you could finish one and then move over onto the other one, and you got actually a different game and a different ending. I thought it was experimental in some cool ways.
And Minish Cap had the audacity to say, like, this is how Link's hat came to be. Never mind that Skyward Sword has kind of since rescinded that, but it was actually kind of daring to be like, this is the beginning, this is how it all began, before Nintendo said, nah, we're going to redo that.
It depends which version of the timeline you're talking about too. Okay, but we'll move on now to Twilight Princess. This game was incredibly hyped up. So I don't know if anyone remembers E3 in 2004. So this is like the year after Wind Waker's come out. Sort of we've seen the cell shading, and then they bring up this incredibly realistic trailer with like a battle scene going on and everything. And then the game got delayed. So it didn't get released in 2005, and then it was delayed again, and it became a launch title on the Wii.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. Breath of the Wild coming 2016, they said.
Yes, but it is one of the, again, another really beloved game in the franchise among the fans. It's actually the highest selling Zelda game of all time, not including all the remakes, and because that's really awkward to type sum those all up. But the thing though with Twilight Princess was, was this game trying to be another Ocarina of Time?
Yeah, look, I think, well, you heard me paying out Twilight Princess a little bit in the Wind Waker section, but I think Twilight Princess is a game that, I guess my main concern with it is that most Zelda games branch off in a new direction. They try something wild, at least in the main console series, whereas, Twilight Princess, you could feel a bit of a Ocarina of Time 2 vibe to it, especially in some of the stuff that I thought, if it had been rethought from the ground up, it wouldn't have had. Like, you get a slingshot at the start of Twilight Princess. After the first hour of the game, you use the slingshot. I don't think it even stuns enemies. I think it's entirely for like knocking down bees' nests. And there's a few little things like that. A few little things like dungeon items that were really cool, but didn't see much use beyond the dungeon they were in. Like, I wish I could use the spinner everywhere. I wish, just replace Epona. If I could ride on the spinner around Hyrule, I think that would be fantastic. But you didn't really get the chance to.
I like Twilight Princess. Is anyone with me? Thank you. I'm not alone.
We'll just use that disclaimer and say we're not saying we don't like it.
But no, I love Twilight Princess just because, granted, I'll admit to all of the criticisms that some of the characters are a little soulless and the world is a little bit empty, but there are some epic moments, like the boss of the fourth, was it Stalwart? Was that his name?
Yeah,
the spinner boss.
The spinner boss was amazing. Oh my gosh, it was epic. Like, you beat him once and then all of a sudden, spoiler alert, you have to beat him again. Like, in a completely different fashion, and it was really good. Rock or whatever his name is, like, he was also, like, the bosses were really great. Ganondorf, like, when you fight him at the end, is fan service on a plate. Let's just be honest, you fight him every different way possible, like through Zelda and on horseback and through Ganon, and then a sword fight at the end. Like, that, how can you not love that? Granted, like, there are some flaws that it had. Like, it took 3.5 hours to get to the first dungeon, and I have to save cats, and I have to go.
Yep.
I have to go.
Baby's cradle.
Who wants to hurt some
I have to deal with Mallow. Oh my gosh. But like, there are some epic moments that are hard to forget, and like they brought in like Link's hero shade, and like it was really fun. And I like wolf links, I really do, even though some people don't. I really did.
Yeah, I think one thing that does make Twilight Princess stand out is I think Midna was the best companion character in the series thus far. I think she was a really interesting developed character. You know, we didn't even mention when we went to Ocarina of Time the companion that Link had then.
Well, yeah, Midna
That's
was
almost a
definitely-
Toad voice.
Yeah, Midna had her own story, and
Yeah.
she was really integral. She wasn't there just to hold your hand or to bug you.
Yeah, she doesn't tell me my batteries are low.
You found the same item for the 500th time.
Yeah.
Thanks, bye.
Yeah, I mean, like, you really have an affection, and the fact that, you evolve with her, whereas, yeah, like, I never quite figured out why Link needed to go find Navi and Majora's Mask. I never quite figured, because I never really got an attachment to her, but, like, yeah, okay, after Dungeon 3, I'm like, oh gosh, Midna, just go away, you're being a jerk all the time, leave me alone, and then all of a sudden, like you save her, and then it's just like, she starts to have an affection for you, like a platonic, and it's just like that's really amazing. And all of a sudden, it changed my perception of it, and that's bold for a Zelda game. Many times you don't have the ability to have your thoughts about a character changed over time. So it was a really well implemented idea.
Yeah, and we can't forget the other characters that made Twilight Princess great. I'm talking about the Uku, the creepy bird, human hybrid things. I think they should make a return.
And of course, we all know that this was Miyamoto in his childhood. No, not really.
In his childhood, he came across a weird bird-human hybrid, and he thought, I need to share this with everybody.
And it's funny because, Tingle, he was introduced in Majora's Mask, and we saw him again in, Minish Cap and Wind Waker and that, and then Nintendo of Japan realised, oh, Western audiences, they kind of think he's annoying, so they didn't put him in Twilight Princess. I mean, there was kind of a character who kind of was a little bit like him, but then instead we get Uku, so maybe we're going to show you, you're going to miss Tingle after this.
Yeah, Tingle, this is irrelevant, but I love Tingle because Tingle represents the player. It's some person off somewhere else. Yeah, no, listen to my theory. There's some guy pretending to be a hero of time. He's pretending to be a fairy. Does that remind you of anyone? Anyone who's playing a game, escaping, pretending to be a hero of time? So that's my theory about Tingle, is that you are Tingle.
Zelda Universe does not endorse this statement.
So it is time for another trivia question.
Alright, so...
We have a copy of Hyrule Historia to give away.
So, the trivia question is, name one of the differences between the Wii and GameCube versions of Twilight Princess, other than the controls.
Go ahead and stand up, so we can find you.
Hi. The dungeons are mirrored versions of each other.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Yeah, the whole game is mirrored.
So the reason why they did this was because they introduced the motion controls in the Wii version. And Nintendo realised, well, 90% of the population is right-handed. So, right-handed gamers might get a bit confused if they waggle with their right hand and they see Link swing the sword with his left hand on the screen. So rather than introducing a whole new character model, they just flipped everything around, made Link a righty, and took it from there. So. Ooh!
Should we do
Already have a copy. We can do another question, yes.
Yeah, we have a backup question.
We have a backup question.
Alright, so the backup question for this is,
So maybe someone who doesn't have a copy of Hyrule Historia.
who is the Twilight Princess?
Okay, I think I saw someone up the back on the left there. Yep, waving his hand.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah, now I've got to find where you are.
There's a black cat over there. Okay. Then we continue with motion controls. So Skyward Sword was the second game on the Wii, the second Zelda game. And this really, I guess, introduced what we had imagined motion controls would be. So unlike Twilight Princess, where it was more like a little waggle, this was like full motion, like you could swing the sword, which was, something that I think a lot of people really looked forward to. But whether or not people actually enjoyed playing that way was another matter.
So, a show of hands. Skyward Sword, great. Okay, I'm sorry in advance. Yeah, there were some really good parts of it, but for me, like, granted, I like the one-to-one motion controls, but every enemy felt like a puzzle to me, where it's like, I just wanted to just kill enemies ruthlessly every once in a while. I don't have to be, I have to swipe from the right at this moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the real question is, did it enhance the gameplay?
I think, well, compared to Twilight Princess motion controls, I think it did. I think one-to-one motion control is what, as you said, it's what people expected when they got the Wii, and it was sort of the promise that it didn't really deliver on until then, or after that, really. I think Skyward Sword is basically the prime use of the Wii Motion Plus, aside from the second Wii Sports game. So yeah, I thought the combat was fun. I think the combat is the least of the issues of Skyward Sword, so which we're gonna get into. Again, just that caveat that they're all great games. If we were reviewing them independently as a Zelda game, we'd give them great scores. But as a Zelda game, we've got a few bones to pick, I think, with Skyward Sword.
Maybe just a few. I think, as I've been playing the series basically from the start and watching it evolve, and it did start off with this sense of exploration, and you could sort of go wherever you want. And Skyward Sword was so linear. I mean, it really held your hand. The paths through certain areas were just like very set courses, and then you had to go back and repeat the same parts over and over, just in different ways. So for me, I was a little bit disappointed because this is not where I had envisioned like Zelda heading. I mean, then we look at where Breath of the Wild's going. Yes, but we'll come to that a little bit later. So that's one of the major reasons why I was a bit disappointed by Skyward Sword.
Yeah, like there were parts where I had to go through the same path. Now, granted, like with the volcano area, Elven Volcano, where they have you go through it multiple ways of, you're having to go through this navigation, then all of a sudden it's taken over by everything, you lose all of your items, and you have to go through it a very different way to find your items and whatnot. And then, of course, with Faron Woods, you have to do it underwater, you have to do it in an exploration. Like there's a lot of
the Silent Realm.
Yeah, the Silent Realm. Like there's some creativity. There's some really good design work that goes into it. But at the same point, I'm just like, I have to do this again, and I have to do this in a different.
It did feel a bit stretched near the end there, where you could tell that. Look, so I have a problem with the water dragon in Skyward Sword. I don't know how many of you know about this water dragon, but this water dragon thinks, there's a few monsters in my forest. I should flood the entire forest and kill every living thing inside it. I'm the protector of the forest. And then said, you have to do a quest for me to prove that you're worthy, even though we'd already saved her life previously. This is an ungrateful water dragon, which is one of my main complaints about Skyward Sword.
And then, we've already touched on Fee. I guess it's really Fi, but it's Fee in my head, so I'm dealing with it. But I liked Fee until about Dungeon 3, and then I go through the 4th dungeon, like, Master, this looks like the boss door. I know! It looks like every other boss door I've seen. You've told me about it 3 times already. Enough. So, at some point, it's like, I want the wherewithal to kind of explore on my own recognizance, and I don't want to be like Zelda or Miyamoto or Aonu being like, all right, well, we know you might be confused at this point. You might have to look in a strategy guide. We're going to make you that you never have to do that. We want to put all the strategy guides out of business, so here's how to do this. And just let me do it. And that's why I'm really happy that Breath of the Wild's going to go in a different direction, where it's okay to be lost. That's a totally great thing. Zelda 1 did that, so really happy we're moving away from that.
So I think it's also, there's a few positives about Skyward Sword as well that are worth mentioning. Groose, mostly. Groose is pretty great. He's the standout character of the game. I would play The Legend of Groose as a spin-off game.
Put him in Hyrule Warriors.
And it's actually, you know, I think Skyward Sword is one of the first games where they actually acknowledged that Link could possibly have romantic feelings outside of anything else, which I'm sure, like, the shippers in this room are going to be were ecstatic about it when it was announced, but that was actually a very touching thing where all of a sudden, like, you're allowed to have really close affection for somebody, and that's still Zelda too, and so I was really happy that they did something like that.
Yeah, and another positive, look, the most memorable parts of Skyward Sword to me were this, you know, the Silent Realms with these creepy, like, koala monster guardian things which would chase you around, and I was, you know, I'd run out of time and sit in the little circle and be terrified and go, how am I gonna get out of this? And I thought that was a great part of the game as well.
Yeah, they were pretty stressful, yeah.
My heart was pounding as, you know, I was being closed in. I was like, I couldn't find the last one, and they were chasing me and I ran out of everything, and I'm just like, alright, I just need to, like, pause the game, leave the room for a little bit and come back and deal with it. I just couldn't, like, it was terrifying.
Yeah, so Skyward Sword was released as part of the 25th anniversary of Zelda, and it was promising to be the Zelda game where it all began, if you remember that slogan. And it was said, you know, they said it's going to be the first game chronologically in the timeline. So I was pretty excited because I thought this is going to, like, tie together some of those elements from previous games and maybe introduce things and show us origins of things. And then it kind of didn't. I felt like it, you know, asked more questions than it actually answered, because then we suddenly had this whole time travel component of that where you go back like 1,000 years into the past. So I'm just wondering, like, how important do you guys think the timeline is to Zelda? Because this is one of the most debated subjects among fans.
I mean, I think the timeline is a little overwrought. I think there's a little bit of baggage. I love the concept of continuity because, you know, way back with Ocarina, I was stretching the 6 games, or I guess Majora's Mask, the 6 games, here's how they fit in, it's very clear how it's done. But eventually it's like, oh, now we have this third what-if timeline. Link died, okay, well didn't happen in my playthrough, but whatever.
Well, I don't think anyone saw that coming.
No.
We had the split timeline people and the linear timeline people.
Oh yeah, no, they formed their own constitutions and things back in the day, back on our forums. They were, you know, they're the splittists and the linearists, and then they were both wrong because the splitters thought there were only 2 paths, and then Nintendo came out and said, actually, there's 3 splits in the timeline, so everyone was wrong. It was great fun, because they were in denial after that for a while.
But it's clear that Nintendo doesn't think their story is they want good gameplay, and honestly, like, at the end of the day, I think that's really the main thing we all want, is a game that's fun to play, and it's just, like, it's really tight. Most of the Zelda games, in fact, all the Zelda games, are really tight in terms of that moment-to-moment gameplay. It's really, really solid. And then they're like, we've got a concept, how are we going to fit this in? Okay, we'll just move some strings here and, you know, tab A, well, it doesn't quite fit, who cares, whatever, it'll all work. And fine, like, that's great. And the Zelda timeline's totally fine, but there's also, like, it does hamper the ability, like, if you really want a solid story and this real solid sense of Hyrule's a real place, it does pull it back just a little bit because you now have to deal with, oh, there's like 15 Malins and 17 Links and
Yeah, I mean, look, the timeline's one of those things that if we had a panel about the Zelda timeline, it would have to be 4 hours, because this is, last night we were preparing for the panel and we launched into a half-an-hour discussion on how great, you know, whether Ilia was fit in Twilight Princess for, you know, her role or whatever, and, you know, we're always happy to carry on about tiny things. That's why we're a Zelda fan site. So, you know, I just guess, in short, I'm fine with the Zelda timeline. I just don't want it to interfere with when they make a new game, because I think that's what hampers, for example, tie-in video games for movies, is they try and follow, you know, a plot of something, and then it means that they can't be creative on their own. And I think that's why, for example, the new Star Wars film threw out all the continuity of the expanded universe, because if they were trying to deal with the already contradictory expanded universe, and they wouldn't have been able to make any semblance of a movie. And I think Nintendo should have a timeline, but ignore it and change it when they feel like it's, you know, they have a better idea.
Yeah. Okay, so it's time for our Skyward Sword trivia question.
So, what did Groose want to name Hyrule, which wasn't Hyrule, when he first, right there, red shirt back there,
When he first set
foot in the surface.
Yeah, so we have a little
Yeah.
Skyward Sword figurine to give out for this one.
I'm fairly certain it was Grusland.
Very nice, yes. Very fitting for Mr. Goose.
Yeah, and I guess one thing that I guess we should also mention, after Skyward Sword, there was A Link Between Worlds, which, look, this is in my top 5. I think, especially after Spirit Tracks and Skyward Sword's linearity, to see Nintendo grasp the idea of openness is the essence of the Zelda series. They were able to experiment in really cool ways with A Link Between Worlds, which it also doubled as, for people who'd played A Link to the Past, a nostalgia trip in that way.
And I think that's really the essence that's bringing us over to Breath of the Wild, just because there is so much now openness that we have in the series.
Yes, so, I mean, Breath of the Wild. Who is excited? So, what are you guys hoping for from Breath of the Wild?
I want there just to be so much to do, and just from the videos that they've showed us, like, hey, you've got all these random things you can set fire to grasslands and that'll like just carry on. Like, there's some really cool stuff that's just kind of experimental things to do. Like, we've seen so many people just like make trebuchets and catapults and whatnot with random stuff in the runes and whatnot, which is really cool. I want some really good characters. I want to visit a town. The fact that we haven't seen a town now, just like they've assured us it's there,
I
but
want several towns.
oh, I want just the ability to find little treasure troves of fun, quirky things everywhere, because that's what Twilight Princess was missing. Like it was so much of a sterile world, and I just want there to be stuff everywhere that's just waiting for you to uncover.
Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting because Nintendo's finally, I guess, venturing outside their bubble to look at things that other series in similar genres have been doing. Because this is a strength and weakness of Nintendo, is they just go off and do their own thing. And that's great. I mean, for example, Splatoon, the reason it was so unique was because most people, when they create a shooter, a multiplayer online shooter, they're already influenced by, let's say Call of Duty or other things in the genre. Nintendo's probably no one at Nintendo's ever played it. They just go, how do we create a shooter? And then they come up with, well, obviously you've got to splat paint on the ground. You've got squids, obviously.
Maybe kids.
Or squids, you could be a squid or a kid. And so that sort of lets them do things that, other people wouldn't think of. But I guess it's also frustrating sometimes to give an example of when it goes wrong with Nintendo not paying attention, like friend codes. Like everyone else, all the other consoles had figured out, look, just have an account system, please don't make us pay 3 times for the same game across different consoles, just like figure out your online stuff, Nintendo.
Yeah. Internet connectivity is like frustrating for me because you might tell from my accent I'm American living in Australia, and I can't play Triforce Heroes because my 3DS is region locked, and it's very sad. Yeah, and like I can't buy an Australian copy, but if I buy an American copy, I'm now pinging American servers, and so all my friends, there's just going to be like they'll boot me out of games because I lag so much. So it's very sad. Like I want to play it, but I can't, and so it's just like, hey, this has been solved. Ping some servers, figure out which one's closest, and use that one. And Nintendo just kind of sometimes has their head in the sand. And they're quirky. I love Nintendo so much. They do some amazing things, but it is frustrating when this has been solved 15 times over. Just kind of perk your heads up a little bit.
So with Breath of the Wild, it's great to see them. Other games, other RPGs, games like Skyrim. I expect some games like Xenoblade as well. They're sort of they're having a look at other RPGs and going, how can we modernize Zelda in a way that keeps the core essence of Zelda while also making it, adding upgrades that have been, creeping into gaming for a while.
Yeah, I mean, when I play games like Skyrim and also Witcher 3, like, honestly, those are the sort of games, that's the direction I expected Zelda to go in. So when it started to become more linear, I was playing Skyrim, which I think came out the same year as Skyward Sword, and I was like, I really want this to be Zelda. I want to run around and like stumble upon some, big monster or some hidden cave. So it's really cool that it sounds like we're going to do that in Breath of the Wild. But I think one of the other things I'm really hoping for personally is story and lore. So again, games like Skyrim, you can wander into someone's house and like steal all their stuff, but you can like read the books on the bookshelf and have like, you know, little insights into the world. I think stuff like that is really cool. Ocarina of Time did that a little bit with the Gossip Stones. So you got, you know, you spoke to those and you got cool little tidbits like, hey, Princess Zelda's actually a tomboy. I thought that little stuff just, you know, makes the world so much more real and expands upon it more. So I really, really hope Breath of the Wild has an incredible story.
Yeah, especially because like when Hyrule Historia came out, I was excited because I'm like, I want to know all the secrets of like all the games in the previous, you know, that have come out before, and I'm like, I want to know all those little details because I'm excited by those. I want to know what happened to the Gerudo. I want to know what all these secrets that they just kind of withheld with a little carrot, like maybe one day. I want to know that stuff. I want to feel really connected to the world because Hyrule's kind of like, it's my safe space to escape from reality. It's the place I always want to go to. Like, I love Assassin's Creed and many other video games, but I cannot leave Hyrule. Like, I've threatened, like, I hate Spirit Tracks or whatever, like, this could be the last Zelda game I play, and I can't do it. It's my franchise.
Zelda fans for life. Okay, so I think we will actually move on to our final trivia question. So this one is a little bit special because Nintendo has given us a set of the 4 new Zelda amiibo. These are the 30th anniversary amiibo. So we have the classic 8-bit Link, we have Ocarina of Time Link, and we have Toon Link and Zelda from Wind Waker. Now these will not be released until the 3rd of December. So what's actually going to happen for whoever wins this prize, you'll need to give us your details because the 3rd of December is a Saturday. On the Monday, December 5, Nintendo will courier those out to your house. So you just need to make sure that there'll be someone there to sign for that. So they've asked, you know, you'll need to leave your name, phone number and address. So maybe don't put up your hand if you're not comfortable doing that or if you're not going to have someone at home. But I mean, this is an incredible prize. So the question we're going to be asking is something a little bit more obscure. It's probably a part of the darker side of Zelda's history.
But the more funnier ones.
Yes. How many Zelda games were released for the Philips CDI console?
Somewhere back there, I believe the guy in the red in the second to back row.
I'm sorry.
That's 3.
And that is correct. We had the Philips CDI. I'm not sure how many of you know the story or you've just seen the YouTube videos. So in the 90s, Nintendo entered into a partnership with Sony actually to work on this extension to the Super Nintendo, like a CD add-on, which was called the PlayStation Project. Unfortunately, that deal fell through. And so, I mean, Sony went off and did their own thing and actually ended up launching the PlayStation.
Sony actually announced that they were working with Nintendo, and the Nintendo the next day said, no, we're actually going with Philips, and it actually completely caught Sony by surprise.
Yeah, so I mean, they ended up, partnering with Philips. They released this console, the Philips CDI, which was the compact disc interactive. And that partnership went sour. I can't remember exactly at what point. So Nintendo, I mean, it's not the Nintendo CDI, it's just Philips. And Philips ended up with licenses to use Nintendo characters in their own games. So there was one Mario game, the Hotel Mario on the CDI, and 3 Zelda games. We had Link the Faces of Evil, Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, and Zelda's Adventure.
I've actually played all 3. I've beaten 2 of them. You know, it is funny because most people just kind of look at the animation and the voice acting and they're like, lol, whatever, and they kind of dismiss it. But honestly, like, the first 2 games, Link and Zelda, they actually were pretty decent for 1993, 4, somewhere around there. Like, they were actually pretty good. Like, they actually had, like, full rendered backdrops. Like, it wasn't sprite art. It was actually, like, someone actually painted stuff and then they pixelized it, and that was exactly what they did. Like, full backdrops. And yeah, voice acting was not really a thing, other than the last Metroid is in captivity. Like, that was all you had back in terms of voice acting back then. So it was really amazing, and honestly, they're a little bit better than people give them credit for. But yeah, the animation's pretty still ballsy, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think we love them because we love to make fun of them. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the discussion time. I'm not sure if we have much more time. We were thinking of opening up for a little bit of audience Q&A, but because we started a little late...
Do we still have time, enforcers? No. 2, 3 questions, great.
Okay.
So you did mention Link Between Worlds, which is one of my favourite games. Can you talk to me a bit about what you thought about that? Obviously, it is quite a remake of Link to the Past. But what did you think about Link Between Worlds? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Tell me about it.
It was amazing. It really, like, there was a period of time where I was like, I'm not going to play Zelda anymore, and it was the thing that renewed my faith that, hey, Nintendo still knows how to make Zelda games. So for me, it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I loved it too. I mean, yes, I got that nostalgia trip from the Link to the Past part, but I love just the flexibility to do the dungeons in whatever order I wanted. And like the puzzle mechanic with like Link becoming the painting, that introduced some really cool gameplay elements, so I had a lot of fun with it. I think my only complaint might be the item system, because like, you could rent them, but I just had enough rupees, I was able to buy them all pretty quickly, so there wasn't much of a challenge there. Cody?
Oh yeah, no, A Link Between Worlds it's one of my favourite Zelda games. You know, as I said, it's open, and I love Zelda games where they understand what makes Zelda good, I think.
Next question?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Just so you're talking about how you like the games for their storyline and in-depth backgrounds and whatnot. I was wondering what your thoughts are on the speedrunning type of thing, where it's about finishing the game, as quick as possible rather than getting into the story.
It's certainly a different aspect, and certainly like it's amazing to see. Like I watch a lot of speedruns to see like what glitches can be found out, like the Ocarina of Time speedrun, which is like, there's the 16-minute one, which they have like let's just work from Queen Goma straight to Ganon, which is pretty cool. But you also have like let's actually do it for reals, but we're going to exploit glitches in 2.5 hours. Like both are really cool, but I think they're a very different aspect than, playing the game, like in terms of how most of us would play it. But certainly like, I love to see what people can do, especially to optimize time and to do what developers don't anticipate players doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of ways you can enjoy Zelda. You can take your time and collect every single item and visit every single place. You can give yourself challenges like a 3-heart challenge, and then speedrunning. I mean, that takes a lot of practice and a lot of effort goes into planning those. And I think, when you've, especially games that you've beaten over and over and over, like I used to speedrun the original Mario because I used to play that so many times. It was just a new challenge and another way to make it fun.
Yeah, I love especially the glitch speedruns, because it just comes up with some stuff that you'd never expect to see. Like, in terms of, let's optimize our time. Oh, actually in Ocarina of Time it turns out that it's actually faster if you Z-target and then run backwards, and you can't see where you're going, but that's the fastest time, so, we have to learn to play the game in reverse, And I think that's a lot of fun.
And then, people discover that, if I use like the Deku stick and strike this wall at exactly this time, they exploit like the memory glitches. Like, how do people even find this stuff?
And the fact that there's always several Zelda games in every GDQ is pretty amazing. So I mean, that shows how good the series is. Last question back in the back.
Why do you think Nintendo decided to remove rolling in Breath of the Wild?
Ooh. If I had to take a wild stab, and this is really what I'm doing, I'm kind of going extemporaneous on this, I think it's because they wanted to change your movement in other directions. Like, we have a jump button, and we have climbing and all of these things, and I think they're saying, like, this is more important than, like, really, most of the time we use rolling now is just to kind of move a little bit faster. And I think, given that they're going to have a horse and a lot of more verticality for that, I think they probably just didn't see as necessary as much.
Okay, let's be honest. I'm probably just going to run around setting things on fire as I go.
It's true.
Okay, well, thank you so much for attending today. We hope you enjoyed yourself. This afternoon, so if you want to come talk Zelda with us, feel free to come say hello.
And we might be outside a little bit if you have a question that you didn't want to ask publicly for whatever reason, so come and see us.
And enjoy the rest of your PAX.